Some moments in life arrive like lightning strikes, sudden, brilliant, and impossible to ignore. They shatter the careful walls we build around our hearts and force us to face truths we've spent years avoiding. For two women whose lives have been intertwined by fate, circumstance, and the complex threads of royal duty, such a moment was about to unfold in the most unexpected way. Catherine had always been the outsider looking in, the commoner who dared to dream of a fairy tale that seemed reserved for others. Camilla had lived through decades of whispered scandals, patient waiting, and the slow burn of a love that refused to die despite the world's judgment. Neither woman could have predicted that a simple piece of jewelry would become the catalyst for a conversation that would change everything they thought they knew about each other, about forgiveness, and about the true meaning of belonging. What happens when two women, bound by their connection to the same man and the same institution, finally confront the unspoken truths that have defined their relationship? What words are exchanged when decades of careful politeness give way to raw honesty? And sometimes, just sometimes, what appears to be an ending is actually the most beautiful beginning. This is the story of that moment, the day Catherine showed her ring, and Camilla discovered that some silences are meant to be broken. The morning light filtered through the tall windows of Clarence's house, casting long shadows across the Persian rugs that had witnessed decades of royal conversations. Catherine sat in the drawing room, her fingers unconsciously turning the simple gold band on her left hand. She had arrived early for what was supposed to be a routine discussion about upcoming charity events, but her mind kept drifting to the small velvet box hidden in her handbag. 3 weeks had passed since her grandmother's funeral, and with it came the weight of a decision that had been haunting her dreams. The ring her grandmother had left her wasn't just any piece of jewelry. It was the engagement ring that had started a love story spanning 70 years, a symbol of hope that had survived war, loss, and the test of time. Her grandmother's final wish had been simple yet profound. Pass it on when you find your own forever. Catherine had found her forever. She had known it for months now, in the quiet moments when William's laugh filled their small apartment, in the way he listened to her fears about royal life, and how he never made her feel like she needed to be anyone other than herself. The ring felt like a bridge between her old life and the one she was building with him, but wearing it felt like crossing a line she wasn't sure she was ready to cross. The sound of heels clicking against marble announced Camilla's arrival before she appeared in the doorway. Even after years of interactions at family gatherings and official events, Catherine still felt a flutter of nervousness whenever they met. Not because Camilla had ever been unkind, quite the opposite actually, but because of everything that remained unspoken between them. "Catherine, dear, I hope you haven't been waiting long," Camilla said warmly, settling into the chair across from her with the practiced grace of someone who had spent decades navigating the careful choreography of royal protocol. "Not at all," Catherine replied, offering a smile that she hoped appeared more confident than she felt. "I appreciate you making time for this meeting." They spent the first hour discussing foundation work, upcoming visits to hospitals and schools, and the careful balance of bringing modern touches to traditional events. Catherine had always admired how Camilla managed to be both approachable and dignified, how she had learned to navigate the complex world of royal duty while maintaining her own sense of humor and humanity. As their conversation wound down, Catherine found herself fidgeting with her handbag, the weight of the velvet box seeming to grow heavier with each passing moment. She had planned to show the ring to William first, to have that conversation about their future in the privacy of their own space. But something about sitting here with Camilla, a woman who had waited decades for her own happy ending, made Catherine realize she needed guidance from someone who truly understood what it meant to love someone in the public eye. "Camilla," Catherine began, her voice softer than before, "may I ask you something personal?" Camilla set down her teacup, her expression growing more attentive. In all their interactions, Catherine had never veered from the safe territory of work and weather. "Of course, dear. What's on your mind?" Catherine reached in her bag and withdrew the small box, her hands trembling slightly as she opened it to reveal the vintage ring inside. The diamonds caught the afternoon light, sending tiny rainbows dancing across the table between them. My grandmother left this to me. She said I should give it to the man I want to spend my life with when I'm ready to take that step. Camilla leaned forward slightly, her eyes taking in the beautiful craftsmanship of the ring. It's absolutely stunning, Catherine. Your grandmother clearly had exquisite taste. She did, Catherine agreed, her voice thick with emotion. She and my grandfather were married for 70 years. Through everything, the war, raising 5 children, his career, her illness, they never stopped choosing each other. This ring represents all of that. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, both women understanding the weight of what Catherine was sharing. Finally, Camilla spoke, her voice gentle but knowing. But you're afraid. It wasn't a question, and Catherine felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes at having her feelings so clearly understood. Terrified, she admitted. Not of William, never of him, but of everything else. Of the scrutiny, of the expectations, of potentially failing at something so public and so important. Camilla reached across the table and covered Catherine's hand with her own. My dear girl, do you think any of us felt ready when we took this step? Do you think I felt prepared when Charles first proposed? Catherine looked up, surprised by the personal turn in their conversation. In all their interactions, Camilla had never spoken about her own journey to becoming part of the royal family. The truth is, Camilla continued, her voice carrying the weight of hard-earned wisdom, no one can prepare you for this life completely. The fishbowl nature of it, the constant judgment, the way every choice you make becomes public property, it's overwhelming even when you think you're ready for it. Then, how do you do it? Catherine asked, genuinely curious about how this woman had survived decades of public scrutiny and emerged stronger. Camilla was quiet for a long moment, her gaze drifting to the window where the gardens of Clarence's house stretched out in perfectly manicured rows. You find your anchor, she said finally. For me, it was Charles. Not the prince, not the institution, but the man who made me laugh when I wanted to cry, who saw me as I really am when the rest of the world saw only headlines and controversy. Catherine felt something shift inside her chest, a loosening of the knot of fear she had been carrying. William does that for me. He makes everything else seem manageable. Then, you have your answer, Camilla said simply. The ring isn't about being ready for the world, Catherine. It's about being ready for each other. As if sensing that Catherine needed time to process, Camilla rose gracefully from her chair. I should let you get on with your afternoon. Thank you for trusting me with something so personal. Catherine stood as well, carefully placing the ring back in its box. Thank you for understanding. I wasn't sure who else would get it. At the doorway, Camilla paused and turned back. Catherine, may I share something with you? Of course. I spent years wondering if I would ever truly belong in this family, if I would ever be accepted not just as Charles's wife, but as myself. What I learned is that belonging isn't something that's granted to you by others. It's something you claim for yourself by living authentically and serving with purpose. After Camilla left, Catherine remained in the drawing room for a long time, turning the ring box over in her hands. The conversation had shifted something fundamental in her understanding of her situation. She wasn't just choosing to marry William. She was choosing to step into a legacy of women who had found ways to maintain their humanity within an institution that often seemed designed to strip it away. That evening, as she sat in her apartment waiting for William to return from his military duties, Catherine felt a sense of clarity she hadn't experienced in weeks. The ring represented more than her grandmother's love story now. It represented her own choice to write a new chapter, to trust and love even when the future felt uncertain. When William's key turned in the lock, Catherine was ready. Ready to show him the ring, ready to have the conversation about their future, and ready to take the leap that would change both of their lives forever. The fear hadn't disappeared entirely, but it was now balanced by something stronger. Hope, love, and the wisdom that sometimes the most beautiful beginnings start with the courage to say yes to the unknown. 2 months later, the crisp autumn air of Scotland carried the scent of heather, and the promise of change. Catherine stood at the edge of Loch Katrine, her breath visible in small puffs as she watched William skip stones across the water with the same concentration he brought to everything in his life. They had come to Scotland for what was supposed to be a quiet weekend away from the pressures of London. But Catherine could sense an unusual energy in William that suggested this trip might be anything but routine. The cottage they were staying in belonged to friends of the royal family, a cozy retreat that felt worlds away from palaces and protocol. For 3 days, they had fallen into an easy rhythm of long walks, home-cooked meals, and conversations that stretched late into the night. It was during these moments that Catherine felt most connected to the man behind the title, most certain that their love could weather whatever storms lay ahead. "You're quiet this afternoon," William observed, abandoning his stone skipping to join her on the grassy bank. "What's going on in that brilliant mind of yours?" Catherine smiled, remembering her conversation with Camilla from weeks before. The older woman's words about finding your anchor had resonated deeply, and spending time like this with William only reinforced how right she had been. "Just thinking about how peaceful it is here, how normal we get to be." William's expression grew thoughtful. "Normal is a relative term for us, isn't it? But I know what you mean. These moments when it's just us, when we can pretend the rest of the world doesn't exist." They walked back to the cottage in comfortable silence, the golden light of late afternoon painting the landscape in warm hues. Catherine was surprised when William suggested they take a different path, one that led up a small hill overlooking the loch. At the summit, someone had placed a simple wooden bench, offering a perfect view of the water and the mountains beyond. "This is beautiful," Catherine said, settling onto the bench. "How did you know about this spot?" William sat beside her, but there was something different in his posture, a nervous energy that was unlike his usual calm demeanor. "I may have done some reconnaissance," he admitted with a shy smile. "I wanted to find the perfect place." "Perfect place for what?" Catherine asked, though something in her chest began to flutter with anticipation. Instead of answering immediately, William took her hands in his blue eyes serious and filled with an emotion so deep it took her breath away. "Catherine, these past 3 years with you have been the best of my life. You've made me laugh when I wanted to give up. You've challenged me to be better than I thought I could be, and you've never once asked me to be anything other than myself." Catherine's heart began to race as she recognized the weight of the moment. This was it, the conversation she had been both anticipating and preparing for since that afternoon with Camilla. "I know this life comes with challenges," William continued, his voice growing stronger with conviction. "I know that loving me means accepting a level of scrutiny and responsibility that you never asked for. But I also know that I can't imagine facing any of it without you by my side." With movements that seemed both practiced and trembling, William reached into his jacket pocket and withdrew a small blue box. Catherine's breath caught as she recognized the distinctive Gerard packaging, the same jeweler that had created pieces for the royal family for generations. "Catherine Elizabeth Middleton," William said, opening the box to reveal a stunning sapphire ring surrounded by diamonds. "Will you marry me?" For a moment, Catherine couldn't speak. The ring was breathtaking, but it was the look in William's eyes that truly overwhelmed her. Here was the man who had captured her heart in university, who had remained her friend through years of uncertainty, who had shown her that fairy tales could exist even in the most complex circumstances. "Yes," she whispered, then louder, "Yes, of course, yes." As William slipped the ring onto her finger, Catherine felt the weight of her grandmother's ring in her other pocket, the one she had been carrying for weeks as a symbol of her own readiness to take this step. The irony wasn't lost on her that while she had been preparing to propose to him in her own way, he had been planning this perfect moment. "William," she said through happy tears, "I have something for you too." His eyebrows rose in surprise as she pulled out her grandmother's ring. "I was going to give this to you," she explained, laughing at the beautiful timing of it all. "My grandmother said to give it to the man I want to spend my life with when I'm ready." William's expression grew tender as he examined the vintage ring. "It's perfect, Catherine. I'm honored." As the sun began to set over Loch Katrine, they sat together on the bench, admiring the rings that now symbolized their commitment to each other. Catherine thought about all the conversations that had led to this moment, particularly her talk with Camilla about finding courage in love. "We should call our families," William said eventually, though neither of them moved to reach for their phones. "In a few minutes," Catherine replied, wanting to hold on to this private moment a bit longer. "I want to remember exactly how this feels before it becomes everyone else's news." William understood, as he always did. They sat in the gathering twilight, watching the first stars appear over the Scottish Highlands, both knowing that tomorrow would bring a whirlwind of announcements, celebrations, and the beginning of their very public journey toward marriage. "Are you nervous?" William asked as they finally walked back to the cottage. Catherine considered the question honestly. About some things, yes. About the attention, about learning royal protocol, about living up to everyone's expectations. "But not about this," she said, gesturing between them. "Never about us." That night, after they had called their families and received tearful congratulations from parents and siblings, Catherine stood at the cottage window looking out at the stars. William joined her, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "My father wants to have dinner with us next week," he said softly. "He's thrilled, by the way. Said he's never seen me happier." "And Camilla?" Catherine asked, remembering the woman who had helped her find clarity in her feelings. "Over the moon. She said she couldn't think of anyone better suited to join our family." Catherine smiled, thinking about how much Camilla's opinion meant to her. The older woman had become an unexpected source of wisdom and support, someone who understood the unique challenges of loving someone in the public eye. "There's something else," William said, his voice carrying a note of seriousness. "The press will find out soon, despite our best efforts to keep this quiet. Are you ready for that storm?" Catherine turned in his arms to face him, as ready as anyone can be for their life to change completely overnight. "But we'll face it together, right?" "Always together," William promised, sealing the vow with a kiss that tasted of forever. Later, as they lay in bed listening to the wind rustle through the Scottish Highlands, Catherine thought about the journey that had brought them to this point. From university sweethearts to this moment of commitment, they had weathered separations, media attention, and the pressure of an institution that had broken other couples who seemed stronger. But they had also had time, something many royal couples throughout history hadn't been granted. Time to know each other beyond the butterflies of first love, time to see how they handled stress and disagreement and joy, time to be certain that what they felt was strong enough to build a lifetime upon. The sapphire ring caught the moonlight streaming through the window, and Catherine marveled at how William had managed to choose something so perfect. Later she would learn that it had belonged to his mother, that he had been carrying it for months waiting for the right moment, that giving it to her was his way of including Diana in their future together. But tonight, all she knew was that she was engaged to her best friend, and tomorrow would mark the beginning of the most beautiful adventure of their lives. The girl who had once worried about not being good enough for a prince had discovered something infinitely more valuable. She was perfect for the man. The announcement came on a Tuesday morning, and by Tuesday afternoon, Catherine's life as she knew it had ceased to exist. The official statement from Clarence House was simple and dignified, but the media response was anything but contained. Within hours, photographers lined the street outside her parents' house in Bucklebury. Reporters called everyone who had ever known her, and her face was on the front page of every newspaper in the country. Catherine sat in her childhood bedroom at her parents' house, having fled London the moment the news broke. Through her window, she could see the telephoto lenses pointed at the house like artillery, waiting for any glimpse of the future princess. Her phone had been ringing nonstop until she finally turned it off, unable to handle another interview request or congratulatory call from people she barely remembered from university. "Darling," her mother Carol said softly, entering with a cup of tea and the expression of someone trying very hard to remain calm. "There are more reporters arriving. I think we might need to consider the palace's offer of security." Catherine looked up from a newspaper spread across her bed, each headline more dramatic than the last. Future Queen Catherine, the commoner's crown, Diana's ring for Diana's daughter-in-law. The photos they had found ranged from flattering to mortifying, including several from university that she wished had never been taken. How did they get all of these pictures, Mom? Some of these are from years ago. Carol sat on the edge of the bed, her face showing the strain of the past few days. People sell them, darling. Old friends, acquaintances, even strangers who happen to snap a photo. It's a different world now. The reality was hitting Catherine in waves. She had known intellectually that marrying William would mean public attention, but experiencing it was entirely different from imagining it. Every choice she had ever made was now being analyzed, every relationship scrutinized, every photo examined for clues about her character and suitability to be a royal bride. Her sister Pippa appeared in the doorway, holding another cup of tea and wearing the protective expression Catherine remembered from childhood. The school rang, she said quietly. They're asking teachers not to talk to reporters about you. Apparently, someone tried to bribe your old art teacher for stories. Catherine buried her face in her hands. This is insane. How do William and Harry live like this every day? They were born into it, Carol observed gently. It's all they've ever known. For you, it's like learning to breathe underwater. The reference to underwater felt painfully accurate. Catherine had spent the past 3 days feeling like she was drowning in attention she had never asked for and couldn't escape. Even the positive coverage felt overwhelming, with every compliment about her appearance or background carrying the implicit weight of judgment about whether she was good enough for the future king. Her phone, despite being turned off, showed dozens of missed calls when she finally checked it. Most were from reporters, but several were from friends offering support, and one was from an unexpected source. Camilla had called twice, leaving messages that simply said she was thinking of Catherine and was available if she needed someone to talk to who understood what she was going through. That afternoon, Catherine made a decision that surprised even herself. She called Camilla back. "Catherine, dear, how are you holding up?" Camilla's voice was warm with genuine concern. "I feel like I'm in a hurricane," Catherine admitted. "Everyone warned me it would be intense, but I don't think I truly understood what that meant. Would you like to come over for tea? Somewhere private where we can talk properly?" An hour later, Catherine found herself back in the familiar drawing room at Clarence's house, but this time the dynamic between her and Camilla felt completely different. Gone was the polite distance of their previous interactions, replaced by the solidarity of two women who had experienced the unique pressure of being under the royal microscope. "The first week is always the worst," Camilla said, pouring tea with the steady hands of someone who had weathered many storms. "Everything feels magnified, every emotion amplified by the sheer volume of attention." "Did you feel like you were losing yourself?" Catherine asked, like the person you were before was being erased and replaced by this public version. Camilla's expression grew thoughtful. "Oh yes, for a while, I felt like I was living in a funhouse mirror, where everything about me was distorted beyond recognition. The press had their narrative about who I was, and it seemed impossible to exist outside of that story." Catherine set down her teacup, her hands trembling slightly. "Some of the things they're writing, they're making me sound either like a saint or a gold digger, with no middle ground for just being a normal person who fell in love." "That's exactly what they do," Camilla agreed. "Nuance doesn't sell newspapers." "But, Catherine, can I tell you something that took me years to understand?" Catherine nodded eagerly, desperate for any wisdom that might help her navigate this new reality. "You cannot control the narrative they write about you, but you can control the truth you live. The people who matter, the people who will work with you and serve alongside you, they'll see who you really are through your actions, not through headlines." "But what if I make mistakes? What if I say the wrong thing or wear the wrong dress or smile at the wrong moment?" Camilla laughed, not unkindly, but with the warmth of someone who had asked herself the same questions countless times. "Oh, darling, you will absolutely make mistakes. We all do. I once wore the same dress to 2 events in the same week, and you'd have thought I had committed treason from the coverage it received." Despite her stress, Catherine found herself smiling. "Really, Really? And the world kept spinning. Charles still loved me. And life went on. The mistakes feel enormous when you're living them, but most of them are forgotten much faster than you think. They talked for 2 hours, with Camilla sharing stories from her own early days in the royal spotlight. She spoke candidly about the loneliness of being constantly watched, the challenge of maintaining friendships when every conversation might end up in the newspapers, and the strange experience of reading about yourself in the press and barely recognizing the person being described. The hardest part for me, Camilla confessed, was feeling like I had to be perfect all the time, that any crack in the facade would be seized upon as proof that I didn't belong. That's exactly how I feel, Catherine said, like I'm representing not just myself, but everyone who's ever been called a commoner, everyone who's ever been told they weren't good enough. And that's both the burden and the gift of your position, Camilla replied. Yes, you carry that weight, but you also have the power to change perceptions, to show that belonging isn't about bloodlines or titles. It's about service, about authenticity, about caring more about the work than the recognition. As the afternoon wound down, Catherine felt something she hadn't experienced since the engagement announcement. Hope. Not just hope that she would survive the media attention, but that she might actually thrive in this new role, that she could find a way to be both true to herself and worthy of the position she was stepping into. Thank you, Catherine said as she prepared to leave, for being honest about how difficult this is, but also for helping me see that it's possible to get through it. Camilla walked her to the door, and for the first time, their goodbye felt like one between friends rather than polite acquaintances. Catherine, one more thing. William loves you exactly as you are. Don't let the pressure to be perfect make you forget that the woman he proposed to is already enough. That evening, William called from his military base, his voice tight with concern. I've been seeing the coverage. How are you really doing? Catherine curled up in her childhood bed, looking out at the photographers still camped outside. Better than this morning. I had tea with Camilla, and she helped me understand some things. She's good at that, William said with obvious affection for his stepmother. What did she tell you? That surviving this isn't about being perfect. It's about being real. She's absolutely right. Catherine, I know this is overwhelming, but please don't let them change who you are. The woman I fell in love with is strong enough for this. I know it. After they hung up, Catherine lay in the darkness listening to the sounds of the reporters outside and thinking about Camilla's words. Tomorrow would bring more scrutiny, more photos, more analysis of her every move. But it would also bring her closer to marrying the man she loved and beginning a life of service that, despite its challenges, felt like exactly where she was meant to be. The girl who had once been too intimidated to speak to a prince had grown into a woman ready to become a princess. The transformation hadn't been easy, and it was far from over, but with the support of unexpected allies and the love of an extraordinary man, Catherine was beginning to believe she might just be strong enough for whatever came next.